Let's call the meeting to order. I call to order the Brattleboro Planning Commission meeting for Monday, January 7th, 2019. And I have no announcements, but maybe Sue does.
I have one announcement. I had sent it around to you, I think last week. There is a March 13th placemaking training in White River Junction from 1:30 to 2:30. I signed up for it. It appears to be free. I don't know if they will have some sort of cutoff because it's being held at the restaurant in White River Junction. So if you're available and interested, it's AARP is doing it.
Yeah.
And they're going to have 3 mini grants at the end. So if you attend this training, you're eligible to apply for a mini grant for the creative placemaking. The only thing I'd warn about Brattleboro is that we have funding in our municipal planning grant for creative placemaking. So I don't know if we'll go after that grant or not. We'll see, but I'm still going to go to the training.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
If anybody's interested.
there wasn't continuing education credits for that other thing that we went to, which is a disappointment.
That's
but-
too bad because it was a good conference.
Yeah, it was. And
There's a sign-up
also,
deadline,
There was no deadline.
but it might fill up, you said.
But I think it might fill up.
Okay.
So, yeah.
alrighty, shall we consider the minutes of December 3rd,
Okay.
way back in 2018?
I got it.
Hi. Hi, Kathy. Yeah, you know, there was a typo in there. Just gonna untype it. All right. Anyone want to make a motion to accept these minutes? Seconded?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. No public comments? Brownfield program?
All right. A couple things going on here and some that aren't expressly on the agenda. At the December meeting, we talked about de-obligating funding. That might be a little all over the place, sorry. So that we would be eligible to apply for some new hazardous substance funding. So we worked really quickly and got that all through. I had to go to the select board, and then we had to work with the EPA. Oh, you might want to sit a little distance or maybe sit over there. I had a little cold.
Oh, sure, then.
I'm getting over it. Maybe I should
Maybe you
sit
should
over
come over
there,
So,
too.
yeah.
We'll go right here.
Felicity, you should
Yes, and I'm gonna sit.
I'm sorry.
Untitled cold. I've had one, Russ has had one, so.
I have
It's
not.
great.
I know,
I'm
but
not
your
looking
cold
forward to
germs
getting
are
sick.
different than our cold
Everybody
germs.
sit over
It's
there.
not- it's not
over.
That's a quarantine zone.
Keep your breathing to a minimum, please.
Yeah, that's with the school age kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hazardous waste.
So we were able to de-obligate money before the EPA shut down, which is good. So we are eligible to apply for a new hazardous substance grant. The deadline is January 31st, assuming that the government is back up and running and we don't delay it. Not really sure of either of those things. But what it means is that we have $45,900 remaining in the petroleum funds to do assessment. It's not very much, and at this time, it's not very much, but at the same time, we have not had any interest in the 3 years. It's been very
But
minimal.
didn't we talk at the last meeting about what we wanted to use
Yeah.
the remaining money for?
We did talk about doing a area-wide plan. I think that, so first of all, I haven't heard back from the consultant as to why West Brattleboro Village and kind of the commercial area out by Sunset Lake Road, I think she's still looking into it. I haven't had a response from her as to why that wasn't included, whether there was no sites, which I said I kind of don't believe, or so I need to give her a little bit of time. I also asked for a cost. If it was not included, how much would it cost for you to go out and do it? I think we should hold off on an area-wide assessment until we get that, and then maybe we do a mailing to these properties. The consultant had done this fact sheet, so I could type up a cover letter just explaining, and then just giving this fact sheet out and see if we get any interest. And if not, then, before we have the funds till September of 2019, September 30th, maybe we can use some of the funding, or as part of the downtown plan, which we'll talk about next, we can supplement it and be able to do a little bit more kind of visioning work.
Okay,
Does that sound okay?
it does.
Yep. To everybody? So hopefully I'll know in February what it costs to kind of do that extra area. If anybody has any comments, I know you if you saw the email over the weekend, but you didn't spend any time because you were having fun sleeping in the cold.
I've read through this.
Do you have any questions or any suggestions?
I would say, this is packed full of complicated information, and so, I don't know, maybe in the cover letter, you would want to just spell out really easily and clearly, like,
What we can,
well,
Or just that they should come talk to Sue.
yeah, like,
Want to discuss it, because it's
something
you're right, it's
inviting,
complicated.
and like, this is an opportunity, come
Yeah.
talk to me, or something.
This is
Just because this is a little,
wanna sell it.
this might be a little intimidating.
okay.
and it's
I hear you.
a free service that the town and the federal government is providing,
Yeah.
which doesn't often happen.
You might want to just put that right on here somewhere. Free Brownfields program or something. But yeah.
except, the assessment is free, but if they find something, then it's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
guarantee that there's the money to clean it up, so. I wouldn't want to advertise it as free per se, but.
Or just
Um,
stating something like, you are not in trouble.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean, like in the
Something
letter.
super- Exactly.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
don't
Like-
worry, everything's fine. There's
You
an
think it's kind of a
opportunity.
yeah.
Yeah,
What, I'm sure that in the beginning of the letter, you'll say why you've sent it to these people and
Yeah.
what the benefits are.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that people, generally speaking, know what a brownfield is?
No.
I think property owners do.
Yeah.
Not
Do you?
necessarily, not if they've owned it for like generations and stuff, there's like,
Yeah.
no, they don't.
I definitely don't think people understand their liability. So they might know that there had been a spill on their property or that there was one time gas tanks on their property, but I don't think they understand liability.
Until they get whacked.
Yeah.
I find as a rule that most people don't understand any land use concepts whatsoever.
Well,
It's
maybe
just
we
a
could
foreign,
get a better
you know,
definition of what a
vocabulary.
brownfield is then, because this definition is.
That's the federal, I know, it's not great.
It
It isn't, it comes out of,
No wonder we have problems.
This comes out of the CFR, the federal.
Jeez.
It's,
I
yeah.
mean, I thought I knew until I read that.
Well, that's more legal speak than layman speak.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's gonna be quite an interesting cover letter, Sue.
Well, maybe I'll pass it around to you guys.
You might want to run it through one of those, those online things that judge the,
No.
no, that judge the like reading level of something? And
No, I've never
really?
seen that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you can Google, what would you Google to find it? Yeah, there's probably like a simple tool where you can just put the text
Yeah,
into
there's all
something
freebie ones.
and it'll say like, this is 11th grade reading level, this is
Yeah.
master's degree
Huh.
reading level, this is, you know.
That's
Because I
interesting
think you
because
want to have both. You want to have this level, and
Mm.
you want to have a like, hey, simply, this is what this thing is,
Mhm.
like in
Huh.
a super
Okay.
easy to understand thing.
No, that's cool. I didn't know those existed.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, that's great to
Level-
know because
Can
I'm
find-
supposed to be writing to an 8th grade reading level all the time, and I never really know what that is.
Why
And
are
I
you
bet you
supposed to
you
be
don't.
doing that?
Because NEPA EIS is supposed to be understandable to the general public and at an 8th grade reading level.
The general public reads in 8th grade.
It's a federal government.
The federal government.
The one that
rates
gave you
it.
this.
And the federal government has
Well, we're not supposed to
determined
know
that
wonder
that's
we
the
have
public.
Problems happens to Murgatroyd.
So back to the hazardous waste potential funding.
Yes.
That is for covering what contaminants? Is that the,
It's everything. So it can be PAHs, heavy metals, solvents, percethylene or whatever. It can be asbestos, lead, PCBs.
okay,
So-
covers the gamut.
Mhm. The petroleum is just, which is the ones that we were having a harder time using, is really just petroleum compounds.
I anticipate, just from what I've been seeing, that like an uptick in the PFAS and like
Yeah.
assessment and standards and
The state's been working on standards
Yeah.
for PFAS, and what's the other one? There's another one,
PFAOs or
Yeah.
PFAH.
PFOA, PFOA. But I haven't seen anything come through yet, and they're not requiring, from what I've seen, they haven't required testing of that yet. But because I think they were still in rulemaking, so, yeah.
So, maybe I missed it, you said is the plan to mail these out to the properties on the inventory?
Yeah,
Mhm. Maybe if it's distributed far and wide, we'd find out about other things
mhm.
that inventory didn't turn out.
And then other folks would feel like they're not being picked on.
Hmm.
Good plan, Sue.
Okay.
Yay, more work.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
gotta use this money. All right, if you take a look and anything pops out at you and you wanna suggest anything, you let me know. So I mentioned, I am planning to apply, so we have about 23,000 left for for hazardous assessment funding left. I'm going to bring a site to you that I'm hoping you will ratify a decision that we made on it. And then I think the remaining of it will go to help assess the Nina paper mill. You may have seen an article in the Reformer
did.
today.
Yeah.
So the remaining of our assessment funds is going to go to help do assessment on that property. We might actually have to give our money to the Wyndham Regional Commission or maybe subgrant it to the, not give it, but subgrant it to them. Because I can explain a little bit about that situation. BDCC stepped in to basically hold the property while they do all the environmental assessment, so that in the end, the new company, Longview Paper, can purchase the property. So there's, if you're a town or if you're a regional development corporation, there is this exception where you can basically be the property owner for a year. You have to come to an agreement with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation about what they're going to require you to do. And if you do all those steps, you can then sell it and stay out of the chain of liability. So that's the process that's going on right now. We don't have enough. I think it was estimated that there was probably about $80,000 worth of sampling that needs to be done. We don't have enough money to do that. Wyndham Regional Commission doesn't have enough money to fund all of it. And the state, while they may be able to, it takes away from other sites, so they have a small pot of funds that they can use everywhere. So we're basically trying to pool our resources to help that project. So that's where the remaining will go.
And what are the pollutants associated with paper processing?
What's the big one? Dioxin, yeah, that can be a big one.
Oh,
I
the
think
chlorine, yeah.
they've got,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not,
Guessing, I don't.
Well, I'm just saying chlorine's in bleach, and then dioxin has chlorine in it, so.
I think from the article it mentioned there may be some asbestos. I think there had been a couple of storage tanks on the property, not enough to make it a petroleum site, unfortunately. Because if it was, we would have spent it.
Where's that building again?
It's the old Fibermark building, so it's right north of exit 3 on Putney Road.
Oh.
There's a big field in front of it.
Okay.
And it's back. It's a large building.
What are they gonna use it for?
They're making paperboard.
Oh,
So
so
Nina
that's-
Paper owned it, and they announced in October that they were closing it. And then there was this, through the paper, or through the unions or whatever, there was a small group of investors that were looking to purchase paper mill, so jobs have actually been saved.
Does Nina Paper have another site?
Nina, not in town.
Oh,
They
okay.
have other holdings elsewhere.
Hopefully the logging trucks going there don't go through downtown. But,
Do, but-
not our purview, but.
Yeah.
Maybe part of the design plan.
So, back in December, we
Oh, well,
got this.
just to answer, that's been discussed. I mean, it's the federal law that they can't be on the highway.
Long trucks can't be on the interstate. Oh, okay.
There's a weight
It's
limit.
too heavy.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say they just get off exit 3, so, they can't do that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Hmm.
Huh.
Yeah.
Why don't they just put more tires on them, spring with the load? No, I don't know.
So, back in December, I think I'd given you the heads up to you in November without naming the site, but Groundworks submitted an application. They are doing a project at their existing drop-in center where they are purchasing the property next door, and they're going to be demolishing it and creating the overflow winter shelter there, office space, and some other some of their services will be there. So there's 2 properties. Their existing property, which is 60 South Main, and 54 South Main, which is a white, it's a residential house. I think there's apartments in it now. It's 2 stories. There's a porch on both the first and the second floor.
And they're demolishing it.
Their intent is to demolish it, and due to its age, it's late 1800s, and they've been dealing with the state historic preservation. They believe there's asbestos in it, and so they need the hazardous building materials kind of quantified in order to know how to dispose of it during demolition.
Huh.
So they've come to our program, and it's a project that the town has been working to find a permanent location. We've been working with them to find a permanent location for the winter overflow shelter. So we took it in. We sent it out for proposals. In the meantime, the shutdown has happened, and so it only can go so far because the work plan needs to be approved by the EPA. So I have proposals coming in on Wednesday. I've let Groundworks know that there's going to be a delay, so if they need this information urgently, I don't know that I can provide it by the end of January like I think they were hoping for.
I bet you they have a bunch of things that are impacted by the shutdown, because it's HUD funding.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is not expected to cost more than 10 grand to do this work. So we'll see what the proposals come in at. So if that's the case, even at 10 grand, we'll have about 13,000 left in the hazardous substance. So that one is coming to a close, so applying for more money makes a lot of sense.
I didn't hear when you said which building it was.
It's 54 South Main Street, so
Is it
ground,
that?
it's,
That's the drop-in center? So it's
Oh,
not-
no,
That was the other side.
the other side.
Gotcha.
I need
So
my visual aids.
thanks for doing that, actually. That's really helpful.
Yeah, it is really good.
Is it a residential building right now? Like, is it a
It is,
house
it's
or-
multifamily,
Oh, yeah,
it's
okay.
this one.
Cool.
So what's gonna happen to those apartments and the people in those apartments? Or do we not care?
Well, I wouldn't say we don't care, but it's a private sale, I mean,
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know that it's occupied. It looks like it's occupied, but I'm not sure.
I'm sure if there's a group that could help them relocate, this would be the one.
right, that's true.
So that's the groundworks project that we accepted back in December, probably without your
Good job.
consent, but I don't know if you want to ratify it or just leave it as is.
Should we go ahead, let me go ahead and move
Make a
it.
motion.
I will move that we ratify the groundworks
Into the Brownfields.
into the Brownfields program.
Second? All in favor?
I-
There you go.
One other thing on the Brownfields that came in, we were doing the the archaeological on 250 Birch Street. That was something that we were able to fund. And that report came back. They have identified, and right now it's being reviewed by the State Historic Preservation Office, but they found basically 5 areas of concern, 2 sensitive sites, which basically they've identified areas that could have been, there may be undisturbed soils that are sensitive for pre-contact Native American artifacts. And then there are 3 historic resources. There's remnants of a dam and a mill pond and a concrete structural base. So it's being reviewed by the state. We'll see what's required. The recommendation is basically if you're going to be disturbing the soils, then we should go to the next level of archaeological assessment, which I think would be test pits and that kind of work. We're not going to have the funding to do that work. I think that the property owner, they have a cleanup grant with the EPA, so that would be an eligible expense for their project. Similarly, if the historic resources are going to be affected, then they're recommending some additional work, probably documenting, seeing if they're National Register eligible. So,
Is there a grant for that?
similarly,
Yeah.
Vermont River Conservancy could use their cleanup grant. I think one of the historic resources, the remnants of the old dam, is not, we don't intend to touch that.
That will remain throughout the work.
And what about the untouched soil?
I'm surprised they found untouched soil.
Yeah, me
That's-
Well, they dug down a bit. What do they call it? They said sensitivity for pre-contact Native American archaeological sites. Yeah, I think they were able to get down under the gravel and see.
And will it be disturbed through the work that's being proposed?
Yeah, that will absolutely be disturbed. And that's kind of the center part of the,
I think what often happens is that you're required to have an archaeologist on site while this excavation is going on to look for things as it's being unearthed.
really. I think that's what they did there was a site in Bellows Falls on the island.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's when they did the Waypoint Center up there. I think that's the way they handled it. They're saying,
Well, you have really 2 choices. You can excavate it now and do this whole
Yeah.
rigmarole, or you can have somebody present.
Which I think
to
VOC would
examine it as the work
As
is
it's excavated.
going on.
Yeah, they said their recommendations are a phase 1 survey to determine the presence or absence of Native American archaeological sites. For the historic resources, they recommend the equivalent of an archaeological phase 2 evaluation focused on archival research, mapping, and photo documentation to evaluate their significance with regard to their inclusion in the National Register of Historic Places and determine their relationship to early industrial development along the West Stone Brook in Brattleboro, which doesn't sound, I think there are consultants around like Lisa Pazian that does that kind of work. I don't think that should be anything that really holds up in a project, but that's a good suggestion about, I think Vermont River Conservancy would
Depends on what
prefer.
the state will let you do, because it's their decision at this point.
So if anybody's interested in reading a archaeological resource assessment, I thought it was interesting.
It's big.
It is, unfortunately, it didn't get printed double-sided.
Oh.
My settings on my computer changed, so now I have to do it every time I want it double-sided, and I sometimes forget. I felt really bad about it. At least it wasn't color. Okay.
So, was that of the Brownfield?
That's the
information?
Brownfield. Yep.
Okay.
Up to you.
So tell us about the municipal planning grant.
So we got the municipal planning grant for the downtown design plan, which we were talking about for those of you who weren't here. There's a little confusion at the select board is what is a design plan. And the idea is that we're using urban design concepts of connectivity and public spaces and the public realm and how does a place look or feel. It's not, that's what we're talking about. Sometimes a master plan will really comprehensively at issues of land use. We didn't feel that level was needed for this because our land use, we don't have tons of opportunity for infill development. We do have some, but that can be addressed here. So we'll look at gateways and some of the urban design concepts. Total grant is for $41,000. If you had a chance, you maybe saw I had drafted an RFP, that I'm hoping to put out as soon as possible. Part of the application that we put in would be a 2-day design charrette, so that was really important to put in here. And then we would have the placemaking, the pop-up placemaking event as part of it as well. So,
And by design, do you mean like, zoning, the bulk zoning type of thing?
kind of, yeah, like, what is the streetscape like?
Yeah.
How much is given over to the pedestrian and green infrastructure. So those are kind of the design elements that I'm talking about. I know there was a question from the select board whether or not this was going to engage artists. It's not the express intent to hire an artist to do something. They could be part of a team. It's really probably transportation planners, maybe landscape architects, planners. That would probably be part of the team.
It's interesting because we've had an inventory of the art and the artists, but we haven't had the in-depth study of the downtown. So this is what's needed now.
Right. So I think it was confusion over what it was called that led to that. Let's see. What I'd like to do is get this out this month and give a reasonable amount of time, and then probably conduct interviews.
And who is it, what sort of groups apply for these things? Like, where do you send this out?
So we put it on Vermont Planners Association and the Northern New England chapter of the American Planning Association. We'll get it up on some kind of trade websites that post RFPs. There is also a database of planning consultants that the state has, and I'll do a direct email of it to them. That's usually the way we put out our RFPs before. Sometimes if we know there's firms that might be interested, we'll direct it to them as well.
Mm-hmm.
The town's had other consultants, planning consultants before to do the zoning and the master plan sections.
Yeah, this just seems a little bit more creative,
Mm.
like so there might be a broader group of people
Yeah.
we might try to attract.
I have also in the past put RFPs up in the New York and the Massachusetts chapters of the APA, and to try to get it a little bit further. But I think oftentimes this stuff gets picked up even if it's just on the Northern New England chapter.
Mhm.
Could you send it also to the National Consortium of Creative Placemaking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be great.
There's actually 2 national creative placemaking groups out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
Yep. The people that you had in Key.
People we brought up were one group, and then there's another group that does a creative placemaking fellowship program at New Hampshire Institute of Art.
New Hampshire Institute of Art.
Yes. But they're
So
from
who came
New Jersey.
from NJIT?
A gentleman and 2 women.
Indeed.
An architect?
They were part of a 3-person team that split off into these 2 different groups. And one of the individuals was a planner, and he started his own, the National Consortium that does the Creative Placemaking Fellowship in New Hampshire. And then there was this group that gets Brownfields funding to do workshops.
I'd just like to know because I
Yeah.
might know them.
They're the National Center for Creative Placemaking.
I can pull up their names. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good.
But their design, one of the team members is a design architect and one is
Mhm.
community engagement policy based.
Yep.
Cool.
And what's the time frame for this? Is it somewhere that I'm not?
We have the grant until it's typically, is it May of 2020?
Oh, wow, okay.
But, I mean, I kind of view this as a priority for the year.
And what's our role?
So the planning commission will kind of be the steering committee. I would imagine that the consultants they're not going to be at every meeting, but there'll be stuff to pass by the planning commission. And then the planning commission will also be conducting public outreach or community engagement beyond just the charrette, so
Oh, okay.
we'll have to.
I mean, we're going to
Speaking-
publicize our meetings and hope that people come, or
No.
we're going to go to,
We're gonna go out.
go to a coffee shop and put up a sign up and say, stop by and chat with us.
Could
You
be
know,
that.
We've been to the farmer's market with a certain amount of success.
Yeah. But, we maybe could do, I'm hoping that, like, when the Shrek, well, first of all, I hope that all the storefronts in downtown will be occupied. But if not, maybe we could, rent a place and set up shop for 2 days, and so it's a visible downtown place. But we could work with the schools, we've done that in the past.
Cool.
Public meetings are not really the effective way. It's kind of like you need to get out to the people.
Cheese and crackers.
Wine.
Oh.
And childcare. It's always important to have childcare if you want people to come.
Or a child safe location.
Or a child-safe location, exactly. So do we have any money, or are we giving it all to the consultants?
No, we're giving it all to the consultants.
Oh, so childcare and cheese and crackers we have to come up with.
Well, there might be
Be
some.
part of their community engagement
We could
plan.
require them to have such a meeting with such elements in it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some department resources that we can put towards it. I mean, we already are. We are getting 22,000 from the municipal planning grant, and we're putting in another 19 or something like that, so.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, food at meetings usually comes out.
You babysit, don't you, Tom?
I could start anytime.
Is there
Good with kids.
a way to, sort of within the community engagement, encourage outreach to diverse populations, or some language in there that can show that we are intending to value sort of input from everyone.
everybody who
Well-
lives in Brattleboro,
That lives and uses the downtown.
there are people who are easier to reach. Yeah, there are people who are harder to
Exactly,
reach.
but yeah, I think to me, seeing a proposal that has some language or strategies or ideas about reaching not the choir that shows up to all the rehearsals, but the people that
I
don't like
think
music.
under the services requested, because we could ask the consultant to help us come up with a community engagement plan that engages, I mean, I'm not sure what the right word is, but I can find it. I mean, diverse gets there, but I guess is it inclusive? There is a term. But I think some of that's gonna be on us, though. I mean, there's not enough money in the budget for them, especially with a 2-day charrette.
And I wonder if putting any language or descriptions about some of the challenges we've had with panhandling and homelessness in this
Little
description
background.
might be a little helpful.
Okay. I've debated,
Right, it's a sensitive issue, but I think that.
but I think it's worth knowing what
Yeah.
kind of stepping into, because
Yeah.
a consultant will hear about it. We're certainly gonna hear about it.
You know, that Whetstone Brook charrette I thought it was well attended,
Mhm.
comparatively speaking. I don't know what they did to garner outreach, get people to come.
Mm.
Anything different than,
Well, they got a lot of, I mean, we kind of handled the outreach to that. There was a lot of personal invitations. There were different sessions for different groups, and we did a lot of personal inviting. They did as well with the higher up, people that they needed in the room from the state, the different agencies.
Right.
Yeah,
anyway, that was
I wouldn't
just
say
a
we
good,
did
a good
anything out of the
example
order. Yeah.
of a lot of people who came.
When was that?
That was in 2016.
The optional interviews, how does that work? Is that, like, do people get extra points if they schedule an optional interview? Do they, you know what I mean? Like,
No, it
what-
means that
No,
we
it's
have
up
the
to
option of
Sue.
interviewing.
We have the option of interviewing.
Yes.
Does that mean there are some candidates we wouldn't interview, or is it just that we get the option
Typically.
to choosing we're gonna?
In the past, we kind of go through a first cut and we say, no, we've got these 2 or 3 firms left and we want to interview them. And so we invite them in for interviews.
Like if it's hard to decide, are you in and ask me a question?
Oh, but if it's sort of hands down, we're obviously gonna hire these guys.
We have
need
in the
to
past.
interview. Oh.
In the past with RFPs, I've included a ranking so that, I mean, because we do use a ranking score sheet, so maybe that should go back in here so that, you do your first cut and you've got an explanation of maybe why that person didn't get an interview.
People like to know.
Yeah,
You think
no,
that would be-
yeah, that seems valuable.
And it also helps people when they're writing the proposal what to focus on.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like saying this is really what we're interested in.
And we've done, a couple of the RFPs I looked at have done phone interviews, which I'm probably not opposed to, especially if it's a firm that's coming from further away. But I didn't know if I wanted to put it in here. I think it's always nice to meet people face to face.
Is that, Is it just me being daft, or is that written in a way that, like, when I read that, to me, it made me think that it was their option. Is that like standard language and I'm unfamiliar with it, or?
It's not language I've used before, so we could just do interviews.
It's true, I would agree with you, Kathy. I would read it as, like, I can choose to be interviewed or just to go on to the next stage without the interview, which would be my choice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
So if people have any more comments or suggestions, I'm sure they can get in touch with Sue.
What is the timeframe? When are you going to send this out?
Well, I wanted to get your feedback on this. I do want to get it out in the next week or so.
Okay. And then when are they planning on?
And then I'll probably give, I don't know, 4 weeks, maybe a month to put together their proposals. So it would, to me, it would be great to have a consultant beginning of March, mid-March.
I know nothing about consulting firms that do this sort of work. Are there any potentially appropriate fits in the Brattleboro area? Or at least Vermont? You know, I'm all about hiring.
Oh, yeah.
local
Yeah, I mean, I
people.
think there's local, definitely Vermont, there's
Yep.
local engineering firms that do master planning.
Yep. And we're obviously reaching out to those folks, and maybe give them a little upper hand before like.
We don't usually give upper
You
hand.
can't
Not-
give them an
not
upper hand,
specifically an
but
upper hand, but
They
like
can be invited.
Was that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just excited to keep the money in the state, so as much as we possibly can. I know nothing about the folks
There
that
is
do
not a
this work.
huge consultant, there's not a very big consultant base in Vermont for this kind of work. So
Oh,
we've
so-
always kept an open mind,
Yeah.
just because it doesn't really pay in Vermont.
Yeah. There's not much opportunity for that.
Well, it's a lot of
Second.
small towns,
Yeah.
right? And most of it's funded through a municipal planning grant, which doesn't give you very much money.
Mm.
And so if the town doesn't have resources to kick in, so there's just, a lot of the regional planning commissions do this kind of work, and so.
Regional planning commissions are essentially consultants as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, a bigger consultant from Boston teams up with somebody local and they piece together the scope of work together.
But there are definitely firms in Vermont.
Cool.
Would it be helpful or useful to provide any of the creative assets that are in town along with this, or at least a link to something like the Arts Atlas that was created a few years ago or something?
Oh,
like
the
that?
Arts Atlas would be a good one to,
Yeah.
to add to the resources, for
Great
sure.
idea.
Yeah. I don't know if we have. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Bring a copy of these.
Something about the Arts
I'll give one.
That's the one.
We have a bunch, so I'll give you all, because it's
They're
a good
very-
one to
it's
have.
very
for
nice.
downtown.
Never heard that.
Is the new bridge have an impact on this, like in terms of like people preparing for it? Should they know about that?
Definitely.
I,
And the
change in
museum
the-
plan, I mean, between those
Mm.
two
What's that
items.
plan?
Yeah.
Museum wants to build
How public
across the
is it?
street,
Hmm.
archery building, the arch building.
I'm just thinking as a resource, if there's a link or something. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I definitely do talk about wanting, it says aid residents to envision future change to public spaces and infrastructure in the Bridge Street and Depot Street area that serve to create a welcoming gateway to Brattleboro. So I add that, maybe, I think the background, I think there needs to be more in the background. That talks about the bridge and about the downtown. Community issues.
Did the, on the second bullet point, improving routes, access, circulation for pedestrians and bicyclists, are these unresolved planning challenges that we've gotten from the community, or are they unresolved planning challenges that have been identified by us?
Both.
Okay.
I mean, I think they have been identified by the community.
They have.
I mean, there's a lot of physical constraint, but, you know, some people have said, well, if the parking was in parallel, then you could have bike lanes and, you know, or if you just had parking on one side. So there's,
Yeah, I was just
We have
thinking
heard
about
it
the
over the
idea of
years.
going back to the community and asking for their engagement. It's nice to be able to show them that we were listening to begin with.
it's definitely been long.
So they'll
long-standing.
be able to see their concerns in these things.
Yeah, the stormwater is not one that came from the public, I would say, though. But we know that the stormwater system is undersized and old in some areas, hence the street flooding and whatnot. So, you know, High Street in front of the post office, Flat Street, we know there's issues there.
There was a downtown survey that went out a fair while ago.
The one with the parking study,
Yeah,
that
the
survey?
parking study.
Yeah. That actually could be.
I was thinking we could like cross, you know, if we want to tie back to things, we could probably cross some of those points between them, because something would be applicable.
Yeah. Actually, the downtown survey, I can't remember, I think we do have a summary report on that. That would be a good resource to
Oh, yeah, the parking lots usage, yeah.
yeah, but it did get into some other issues, quality of life issues. Yeah.
And how does this work interface with nonprofit and for-profit business and economic development?
Well, I mean, the goal is to make it attractive, it's to improve downtown and therefore make it supportive of economic development.
So are we inviting though, like the BDCC and other sort of major income generators in town to participate? Were we asking for?
I wouldn't say specifically, I mean, it wasn't in my thought that, you know, we target them as a stakeholder. Downtown Brattleboro Alliance, yes. They're one of the big stakeholders.
So,
But
but
we
this is
could-
more of a, this is more of a design plan than a economic development
Yes,
plan?
yes.
And so you're not really addressing the issues associated with the demise of retail?
Yes.
It's more
That's correct.
bricks and mortar.
But
Yes.
design and economic development go hand in hand, right? We're designing a more attractive downtown so that people will come and spend money and hang out and want to live here.
Well, I guess I shouldn't say, I wouldn't necessarily, maybe attractive is not the right word.
The
Designing
physical
us,
elements.
we're trying to provide physical elements that make people want to be downtown. So whether it's, we
Like
have
the
more street
elements-
trees and,
Yeah.
you know, and that makes people happy because that's what people want to see, or more art downtown because that's what people want to see in that.
But I mean, it's an entirely different ballgame to talk about what are all the factors that are affecting retail success in the 21st century.
But it's a systems sort of structural thing. I mean, you can't ask people to come and hang out in downtown if there's nothing for them to eat, buy, or do, right?
It's just a scope question for what, the amount of money we have and like the limitation of the grant.
I think it's just going to be,
I was just thinking about the engagement piece, like how do we, I guess, structure people's expectations of what this is going to be?
I think you're
Right.
going to have to make some assumptions about what constitutes a good business environment for the downtown, and then move towards the placemaking and the physical planning issues from that point.
your point sort of brings up an interesting conversation that I've been having over in Keene with designing a corridor that's accessible and usable for pop-ups and food trucks and the businesses that are going through incubator phase like they are at BECC. Like, how can we make a space that accommodates not just community members wanting to be downtown, but these small businesses sort of kickstarting their work and making space for that in the design of the downtown. Just
Yeah. I mean, I can just imagine, depending upon how successful it is, that since there are so many needs here, that unless we have a sense of sort of, here's what we're really trying to do, these are the things we're really focusing on, that a lot of people will just come forward with the sort of, here's my egg for the basket of a design charrette for the downtown. That's kind of huge, right? I mean, you have to.
Well, I think that the consultants will kind of narrow the area, and what's going on in the charrette to get the information that they need. I think that maybe having them help us with the community engagement to kind of keep it where it needs to be, so that it's not too broadly defined.
So the goals maybe would be to have action items that the town can take as far as sidewalks and landscaping and integration of public art and use of public parks. But also to allow the community to engage in envisioning how the spaces can be used and programmed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like a two-pronged thing. You got more, Scally.
I need to go, I feel like I need to go and study this, because it is inconsistent with what I thought it was, but I'm not quite sure what it is.
What did you think it was?
Well, I mean, for me, the idea of a master plan is that it involves economic development and future planning, and the notion of we have a housing crisis, and we also have the crisis of the homeless population and income disparity, et cetera, as well as infrastructure problems like stormwater. That a design plan would integrate all of those things, and might say, we have a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, 20-year horizon, and we can engage people at certain facets, and we can do certain things, but it certainly wouldn't confine itself to sort of design issues alone, because design alone is, just kind of, it doesn't really work. It always has to be integrated with income generation or economic development or some kind of service that you're providing that brings people in and brings people in with money.
Sorry. I have to drive through. I think that, the housing situation in Brattleboro and the mix of uses downtown, I think it is all background that a consultant needs to look at. I guess from my point of view, we have solid buildings, don't have a lot of infill opportunity. Solid from, the...
Like a structural.
Yeah, structurally solid. We have an attractive block, multi-story downtown. There is some residential. Yes, maybe there could be more residential downtown. We can't control everything that happens with the uses, businesses coming and going. It seems like it's been pretty steady in Brattleboro, at least for, since the 80s. I think that was the last kind of, downtown was really rough back then and picked itself up. And, so, yeah, it was more to focus on we hear all these problems about biking downtown and walking and all these challenges, and people aren't feeling comfortable downtown these days because, which isn't to say that there wouldn't be a recommendation that people have longer hours in business, or that There's been some retail market studies done that's identified the type of businesses that could be beneficial to downtown. There's just never been any kind of long-term planning for public improvements in the downtown. It seemed.
And there could be, like the placemaking, things that will enliven the downtown to attract businesses and retail business and growth.
I don't think
kind
like
of skirting the economic development issues.
I think that there's a link to economic development. If you can make a better Amtrak station downtown, maybe we can attract more visitors, or so I think that stuff doesn't go away, and that's part of what will be looked at. It's just not the main focus. I think everything that we do, we want it to be improving the economic situation or have that potential for it to
I
do
think,
that.
Sue, it sounded like you said that in the background of what's given to whatever the winning firm is, they're going to have that economic background of Brattleboro and artistic and stuff, but what they're going to be giving back to us is going to be related more to changes that we can make to infrastructure that provides value back into I'm going to use the word attractive again, attracting people downtown and businesses downtown, because there would be value there in the infrastructure for them. Did I summarize it?
I mean, there's some towns that need to manage growth. We're not one. So that's all in the background, that what type of town we are and what we want out of the downtown is, has an economic development element to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we ought to work at managing growth, because in order to survive, we really do.
No,
need to grow.
but what I mean is that there's some towns that have so much growth, they need to control it.
Right.
And we're
right.
just asking
We
for
run
it.
it.
Right, right, I mean, but that's what I guess I'm talking about, is we want to sort of, plow the ground and put some seeds in and water them.
Yes.
And
But I think in absence of, we're not getting a lot of people migrating here. The way we did
sure we are.
a lot.
Not a lot. I mean, but some people trickling in.
Yeah, but northern New England as a whole is not.
Right.
We're not.
Right.
Yeah, but
Southeast
now
or something.
Vermont will give you the big tax if you move here, so who knows? Wish I had that when I moved here. Yeah, too late for me too.
Yeah, I think that is the intent, is to kind of make this a place that people want to be and people to come and stay and live here. We want our businesses to thrive, but we did a study a couple of years ago that kind of looked at our commercial districts, and we just weren't seeing growth in that, and it was kind of, the suggestion was make some public, in the meantime, make some public improvements and make it more attractive for a business to locate there.
And make it generally easier for
Mhm.
businesses.
And have we done that? I mean, make it easier for businesses to move here. I mean, the tax credit's one, but have we done anything else?
Talking about
Well-
Brattleboro or the state?
Both.
The new zoning has
Yeah, it's
streamlined things.
streamlined stuff.
Yeah, the
yeah.
process was simplified. And
On the
things-
Brownfield.
And I was going to say things like the Brownfield program,
Yeah.
again, really advertising more out there that is a value to businesses.
Yeah, in the paper, the fact that there's resources available to deal with environmental issues that make it more attractive for this new firm to come in and buy the company. Then it's one thing. They're small.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something, it's a thing we can do.
What do we do if we get a local person who's not a planning group, but just likes doing creative placemaking and thinks they can do this?
That person should team up with someone
Yeah.
who does master plan.
Okay.
Yeah. That'd be the suggestion.
And I think, Sue, you addressed that notion, you know, I think you included, you know, if you've worked with a group before, like those groups could identify who you worked together for.
Yeah.
I didn't word that as nicely, so.
Consultant team opportunities.
Yeah, tag teaming.
Yeah.
Is the goal for one of the products that is produced to be kind of like our town plan, but
No.
just focused on the downtown?
Well, I didn't want to specify, I mean, that could be.
Could be.
That could be, it could be a poster. It
Right.
could be, well, one of the products will actually be a pop-up that will be out there for some period of time. Actually, maybe I should put that in there too. But, yeah, I mean, it could be a final plan and a report. I wouldn't see it as big as something like
Sure.
that. I think we definitely want it digestible. We could choose to go some web-based route.
Well, that commercial study was a slim little
Mhm.
report about, well, their findings. There must be some sort of findings report that
Mhm.
is in scope.
Yes.
Since you asked the question, and this is something we probably can't answer today, but, you know, do we have like a log of the values to businesses or to the town and stuff that this group is putting out here that's easy to find on the website? So if somebody has that question, whether they're, you know, a person in town or if they're a business who's like, oh, I wonder, you know, what would benefit me about moving to Brattleboro? That stuff's easy to find.
We have.
BDCC must have that, right? Isn't that what
I
they're
don't know,
supposed to be
yeah.
doing?
I
Well,
guess
you
I'm
know,
asking a question.
it was in the master plan, but I'm sure it bears repeating, and it might benefit to have it repackaged in some way for.
We have, there's an old brochure, it's several years old, that has the Brownfields information in it about, you know, doing a business, what do you need to do? What resources are available to you, whether it's the, you know, some of the small business assistance program or whatnot. So there is that. I think it's available online. I know there's some discussion of trying to redo the town's website.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
you-
a developer, but, you know, a website is part of like, I'm a
Yeah, I mean, at the time that it was a bunch of
as a citizen, that's what I.
people
look
from
at,
the
too, is
offices
website.
that kind of did the website that is now, and at the time that was a big improvement, but I think even now it,
That's a good idea. I mean, that could be an item in the scope for a product to add to the website for potential residents and businesses. These are all good ideas. You have a lot of, we might want to maybe see the scope again before you send it out, because a lot of people have made good suggestions.
well, don't want to wait till February meeting, so what I'll do is I will send it out to you. Please don't reply all, just send anything to me, because otherwise we'll be in violation of open meeting. Well, but if you've got
That
some
way
comments.
we can each see all of our comments, you know, in the final part.
And give us a due date.
Okay.
Due dates.
Yeah.
I need due dates.
It won't be that soon, because I have a couple of pressing reports due, but maybe next week, having it due by the end of the week or something.
Great, thank you.
But-
But did you want to appoint a review panel now?
Is there anybody that is interested in reviewing proposals?
3 people.
We can meet it as your,
Reviewing proposals from potential consultants.
consultants.
How many people need to be on the panel?
I'm curious to see them.
Yeah, I'm curious also when it comes to time commitment. I'm not sure if I can.
Well, I'm happy to share them with everybody. Yeah, if you don't have the time to, you know, sit and interview people or whatever, but I can definitely send them along to everybody.
Will we be using a rubric to go through the?
I will have a rubric in the next version that way, because you maybe have seen some that, well, for this kind of work.
Because how many people were you hoping to be on that list?
I think 4 or 5 is fine. I mean, like odd numbers.
How many are on it right now?
There would be
3?
4. The 3 and then myself.
I'll be a 5th, but unless you.
When do we think this will happen?
February, towards the end of February.
I probably shouldn't be on it then. I thought that's when I would go south for the latter part of the winter, so.
Yeah, February is actually an excellent month to not be in there.
Yeah.
But I'll be here. I must be here, so.
That being said, I will be here.
Did
Be
you
gone
have
for a
money to that
couple
list,
days.
or?
What's that?
Did
I
you
did.
have money? Cool.
You don't need to make a firm commitment right now.
Yeah, well, I have a lot more free time these days, so.
Our task will be just to move a small selection onto the select board, or even just select one?
No, we would get all the way to making a recommendation, and then the select board would authorize it.
So you would prepare the ranking based on your review
Yeah,
of the
and then
various
interviews.
books.
And,
Super, that sounds like fun.
Potential land use regulation amendments?
all right. Well, I apologize. It was a busy December, and so I don't have anything on footprints or densities for this. I'm really hoping to have something for February, but I've got the grant due. I've got a couple of other things due. So,
Well, that's fine.
but in the meantime.
So I stepped in and proposed something.
Yes, and I realize I never forwarded it to you, but you have it in your packets today, so we can
So
have a
tell us,
conversation.
Don.
What
Sure.
is it?
Well, looking in the land use regs at the exemptions, I guess what I was kind of seeking here, and I thought would benefit just everyone in town who's a landowner, is a little clarification about if every structure needs a permit, as far down as a mailbox, a doghouse. There's exemptions for
And now,
fences.
where are you? Let's just look at the,
Mhm.
Sue included something.
Well, the general exemptions. The general exemption shows the current ones.
So.
And then I suggested, if you go down the list.
Are we on page 1-3?
And if you flip it over, I just suggested number 15 here. Because I've seen that, something along the lines of what I wrote there in many towns planning and, zoning regs. And all the towns that surround us have that, something to that wording. And,
well-
and 2 of the towns don't even have zoning.
Isn't
So-
one of the things that we were doing in the new revisions, something that was of this size, would have to be 10 feet from the border and...
We, in our regulations now, so the cutoff, you need a permit and it needs to comply with the setbacks. If it is this 200 square feet, you can actually get a waiver to be 5 feet from the setbacks.
But it doesn't
But
need
you
to
still
go
need a
before the
permit.
DRB, Brian can do, right? Wasn't there something?
Can Brian do this? I think Brian can, yes, Brian can,
So the last 3 pages show the 3 bordering towns as very similar exemptions to
Yeah,
permitting.
it just
Oh, that's
triggered the
this-
thought
this.
that...
Yeah, the very last 3 pages, Halifax.
We did something very similar, and the last time we made changes to the zoning.
oh, yes. Sorry, Liz, you are correct. So you can have a shed up to 200 square feet at 5-foot minimum setback, in the rear side, not in the front. But you do need a permit for it.
Right, but isn't it through Brian, and you don't have to go to the DRB?
Yes.
Yeah.
But what Tom's proposing would be,
An
wouldn't
exemption.
even
As of
require a
right.
permit. It would be an as of right.
I mean, and I think as long as it complies with the flood zones and setback zones. You know, I didn't write that into what I wrote there, it's number 15, but, you know, like over in the farm, the agriculture thing, I know it's a state law, and that's not something you guys can opt to really edit or whatever, but it says, you know, an exempt farm structure must meet setback and flood hazard requirements. So, I mean, I just wanted to keep it simple as a proposal, but we could, you know, open to adding that in.
So we could just say small accessory structure that meets setback and flood hazard requirements.
And no one's living in.
I mean, but the overall
But no one's
heading.
living in it, yeah.
Yeah, no one's.
Except the chickens.
Except the chickens.
So,
And then my question too was, you know, usually we regulate chicken coops in the more urban areas, but not in the
Rural residential.
well, chicken coops, yes. So in the residential areas, in the more urban parts of town, you need a zoning permit to even have chickens. So you would go in, you get your permit for chickens and the coop. The coop has to be 50 feet from any neighboring residential structure. It could be, you know, 40 feet from the neighbor's shed, but 50 feet from the house, just because of nuisance. You cannot have a rooster in the residential neighborhoods, parts of town.
because this is not Key West.
When you're in the rural residential parts of town, you would still need a permit for the coop, because right now it falls within
All
a,
accessory structure.
it's an accessory structure, unless it was a, you know, one of the mobile ones.
But even people who have chicken coops in the rural area, you want them to be 50 feet from the property line.
Don't have, it's not explicit, no.
Maybe 50, well, it says here 50 feet from any dwelling on an
Yes.
adjacent property. I think that's
Okay.
relevant wording. Practical wording. Oh, later, in development standards for accessory structures.
3-1.
Foul. Yeah, you see, there's just things associated with foul that make me think, I guess they're already incorporated into this element, but they're a little trickier than a shed.
Right, it's nice.
I think,
I mean,
I thought it was interesting to see that other towns do have up to this 200 square feet that don't need a permit. I think it's important that setbacks still be maintained.
sure.
You know, whether it's the 5 foot. Our assessor's department basically will assess anything that is over 100 square feet. Now,
How the other towns do it, do you know?
I don't know. I don't really know where that rule came from for Brattleboro. I don't think there's like an assessing standard. The thought is that if it's 100 square feet or less, you know, like you and your friends could move it in a pickup truck or something. Where if it's over 100 square feet, it tends to be a bit more.
And that's not
permanent.
codified anywhere.
No.
Mm.
So it might be a.
I saw it looks, but I'm not sure what it means.
What would be, trying to run through like the things that you would be building and what would be the uses? Like storage, shed, you know, if it's a small little, like building, can you then run a business out of it, or that would not be a residential use? Would that, you know, I'm just trying to run the scenarios of like what that would allow people to be building, and then
Right.
would they be using it for?
Can I say something?
Sure.
I'm super in favor of this idea for mostly one purpose being what that can do is free up a lot of your storage space. You know, creating storage to get things out of like your garage, let's say, and then a garage can then become potentially a business, you know, which is an actual incubator space, which there is a ton of opportunity and possibility with that. With like, there's a lot of unused space in Brattleboro, like where Brattleboro's a town with space issues. You know, so if we can free those spaces up and then like kind of create things with them, I can see some opportunity there. You know, a lot of opportunity. So.
Making it easier to.
Making it easier to start businesses with not needing as much permission and governance, so.
And I just felt, I mean, maybe this could be something that's expanded to more than the rural residential zones, but I just wrote those because I mean, you know, when people have 3 acres or 50 and they want to put a shed up,
Yeah.
and it's far from a border, it just,
Makes
it
sense.
doesn't seem like there's, there's any, to me, any downside or detriment to the public. So I don't see why there should be
The
a
other
permit
thing-
for it.
What I would say about that is there's a lot of small lots in the rural residential.
Oh, granted.
So it's not as, I mean, yes, there's a lot of big lots too, but especially along the roads. You know, a lot, you know, definitely larger than what you have downtown, but they can be under an acre. I think administratively, we would like it to be a little bit more uniform, because otherwise it's like, well, you may or you may not need a permit. We like to just kind of have one consistent message of,
Did you talk to Brian about what he thought?
yeah, at first he wasn't a fan, and then I think after thinking about it, he's like,
I think it makes a lot of sense, especially if we don't use the word foul in association with it. Like a chicken coop's a chicken coop, and then a shed's a shed. You know, so if we keep foul out of it, you know, which I have both a chicken coop and a shed, and a garage, and a house. You know, that enables me to do a lot of stuff because, you know, then I don't have to go rent a space that doesn't actually exist in this town. So it's very empowering to not have to get zoning sometimes.
So you're saying like a shed with
We're not that
no
bad, just so you
habitation
know.
Oh, I know.
Get your
I know
permit
how- I
quick,
know,
and it
yeah.
doesn't cost that
No
much.
chickens.
Sorry, what's that?
So are you proposing like a shed with no
Isn't that
people and
weird?
no chickens?
Yeah, just, accessory
Yeah.
structures that aren't
Yeah.
habitated.
Yep.
But I like it, I mean, if we were to do this way, I like it the way Marlboro and Dummerston have it, because it's small accessory structures associated with residential uses, which are less than whatever, and they're not in the front yard, and they're, you know, whatever distance from the property line. Because I think we need to keep it associated with the residential. Otherwise, it's, you know, commercial businesses expand, and then you need, you know, and then it just causes lots of problems.
So if someone gets some like undeveloped land and they're doing like forestry projects on it or just recreation projects and they want to put up a shed to like store their tools and stuff, is that what, is that not
That's a
residential
good question.
use,
I
or-
mean, well, it's not a commercial use
not
per
real,
se.
it's not.
Somebody owns the property and
It's for
they're farming
pleasure.
it, and
Yeah.
they're, I would say that's residential use.
Because there's home business and there's hobby shop, but then I could see it being beneficial if someone is doing forestry and they need like a kiln to dry wood, you know, which is super common in this area, you know, and then that wood can then become something else. So I see a lot.
Well, what kind of forestry are you talking about? Is
Well, I mean, just like simple,
somebody's out
not
on
like
their
clear
own
cutting,
land?
no, but on their own land, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
well, yeah,
No, I'm
I
not
mean,
talking
if
about
it's-
commercial anything
right.
at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's
we're
my,
talking
like,
about
I think
residential
if
neighborhoods,
it's
yeah.
associated with a
Yeah.
residential use,
Yep,
it's,
exactly. I see a lot of benefit in
Well,
this, a lot
I
of
think-
potential.
I think this is a really good introduction. I think maybe we should think about it. And maybe, Sue, you could
Fine tune it.
formalize what type, how you would want it to be structured, like the Dummerston or
Mm.
I forget what the other town was. So then at the next meeting, we can make a more informed decision. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And then just a quick comment about zoning in Brattleboro. The process is definitely not difficult. And it's not expensive either, you know, but it can be daunting for some people that don't understand. You know, so like anything we can do to like take away the element of like the scary what if, you know, it's like just beneficial for everybody.
You know, I
guess.
think you should be telling all these scared people that you know to come in.
Well, I
and
tell
talk-
the scared people I
and
know to
talk
do whatever they want, because that's the only way things get done.
well, I don't think that's
I
accurate
know,
or
I'm sort of
fair.
being
I
sarcastic,
mean,
yeah.
But you can get a permit
But
in
you know,
less than a
talking
week
to
from
Brian
us,
and talking to Sue
Brian's really-
is very illuminating.
Yes, absolutely. But it is also really scary at times, depending on what you're trying to do. Not Sue. You're not scary.
Let the record show.
Exactly. We're being filmed right now.
My
so
girls
I
sometimes
mean-
think I'm scared.
Well,
So maybe there's some people who don't understand Maybe,
mean,
maybe they think when they ask permission, it's gonna be kind of a 50-50.
I mean, I think we definitely
And so
get
when it's
people
for a
who
small
come in and
structure,
are a bit
make it
surprised, like,
clearer.
oh, that was easy. Oh, we
Yeah.
don't need a
I thought
permit,
it
or.
was, I thought it was easy, yeah.
You know,
I thought people,
but-
I'll say for the
Yeah.
record, I thought people tried really hard to be accommodating.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact of the matter is, we are not Guilford or Vernon. We have decided to have zoning. We've had it since, 50 plus years.
Yeah.
So.
I don't think this is taking away zoning.
No, but I'm just saying, I mean, we have required, we've decided as a community that we want permits for things, and so it's the process. So I'm pretty sure, if you're a business and you're going through it in New Hampshire, it can go on and on. We are pretty streamlined at this point.
Brattleboro has, as a town that has decided we're the government and we're here.
We have to keep
Refreshing.
that in mind too. Not lose sight of that.
So, 2019 priorities?
So this, I wanted to hear from you. I mean, Tom probably kind of brought it up at the December meeting. Like what are the things that you're interested in, or think that you maybe want to give a little attention to?
Relaxing zoning laws? Oh, I'm just kidding.
Sorry. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, but.
I think it was really helpful and interesting to hear from the design review board. What sort of things make it hard for them to say yes.
Make it hard for them to say
To
yes
say
to
yes to-
applicants? Okay.
They're our front line and they're sort of the best to help us understand. I know, exactly.
It's just it'd be nice to keep a dialogue
Keep it-
going with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think, as we work on the downtown plan, we are going to have time in there to take up other items, so.
I'm interested in, because of some of this stuff you've been doing with grants, I'm interested in more like that and making it, I was talking about this a little bit earlier, making it more widely known to people, both what we've accomplished so far and then also what things are available to them, and continuing to add to that list, making more things available for people. We talked at an earlier one about the historic structural grants, which, some of those come with, caveats, which someone could decide if that works for them or not. But that kind of thing, like being able to pursue that or other things of that nature, economic development grants and things, environmental. I'd like to be just doing more of that and really getting that word out there so that people know that these things are there, because I've been surprised by what's available. And I'm not in the position to take advantage of that kind of thing, but like I said, you should know.
Well, I think that's a really good idea because, when we have these downtimes, we should just explore what G&Q citizen will be looking for from a planning perspective and outreach to them as to what's available.
To
In a
piggyback-
variety of, brownfields to whatever.
Yeah, to piggyback on that too, like you brought up, like, is there a list or is there a resource option list for economic development or business moving into this area for them to know what to expect? I don't know if that's something for the planning commission to
There's
tackle or anything.
no reason it couldn't be the planning commission.
Yeah. It'd be so interesting to see what it actually looks like to attract businesses to this area. So,
And, it's interesting too, because we could also be a conduit for all the various groups that do that in the town, like the chamber, the BDCC, and, the downtown. We could see what they're all doing and coordinate it.
I think it'd be really interesting, like we've had a few presentations at our meetings before, I think particularly on flood remediation and water management, but to invite those groups in just to tell us a little bit about what they're doing and what their vision is for how they're impacting Brattleboro. So we can make sure we're all moving towards similar.
And you know, that might be something that would be very helpful in terms of outreach to the design plan.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. And
You
then
know,
it
to
gets at
get
the
to
economic.
Felicity's,
Right.
Yeah.
let's see what's out there and see what other people are doing and see if it has any, you know.
Would it be interesting or worth our time to like invite like the select board and like every meeting have like someone participate from invite people to come in, and I'm not telling you to do it, you mentioned inviting people earlier and that goes a long way. Like invite these players, you know, like the DRB in one meeting, the select board in one meeting, and like see like if they have questions or answers or.
Generally speaking, we go to the select
Yeah.
board, the select board doesn't come to
Yeah,
us.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
exactly, but I mean, like, if they're curious about anything, if it's an opportunity for them to come in and talk to us.
Then we go to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so then, yeah, not specifically the select board, but other committees or
Yeah, well,
nonprofits
DRB.
or, yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
I'd love to hear from the Housing Trust and
Yeah,
BCC. and-
exactly. Like Spoon came in last time, you know, and that's really interesting. You know, having someone come in to just like talk to us, you know, like hear someone else out. You know, obviously public participation is difficult, but what if we invite people, you know, especially people that are already involved in doing stuff, and you know.
It would be interesting to do some sort of almost a social event with like a kind of a round robin presentation or something from all of these different committees in the town, just to be like,
Yeah.
what are you working on?
Like the fence.
Yeah.
I've seen on the Brattleboro Facebook page that there's a couple select board members who are quite active there in the conversations. But I think people's like maybe questions or concerns or gripes or suggestions are more in line with that, more with like the executive branch. And like you say, they don't fully
We have-
grasp the land use things. But
Yeah, and also just that we are a creature of the select board.
Right.
And they're the ones with the certain decision-making powers. And we have our own role, which
So do
is-
they ever make suggestions to us? Or they're the
Yes.
end gate? Oh, they do make
Yes,
suggestions?
but because they review our work. And in reviewing
Right.
of our work, they make comments and suggestions.
And sometimes those are like even novel suggestions that aren't just like prompted by what we bring them.
I don't know, novel.
Okay, yeah. There's a novelty, are you familiar with the novelty scale? You know? It's very black and white.
They'll occasionally give the planning commission a task.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just haven't been here long enough to
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it happens too often,
Yeah.
but
It's
it
like
has
a
happened.
year now. I've been here. I'm very
But we
new.
also,
I'm very
I
much
mean,
learning.
we
and
also
I
have
haven't
not
heard
been
from you.
before the select board. I
Yeah.
mean, other than having the town plan or our regulations up, the planning commission hasn't. The energy committee is probably the best committee at getting face time before the select board. And there's no reason that we couldn't. We just probably want to strategize over what we want to.
We just
Discuss with
you,
them.
you know, they're busy. And we don't want to just speak to them for the sake of speaking to them. We need to have something
Yeah.
concrete to say to them.
Yeah.
And one thing would be the results of this outreach that we're proposing right now. I'm sure they'd be very interested to hear. And they'd be interested to hear not only what we take in,
Yeah.
but what we decide to do with it.
Yeah. So one of the members of the select board right now is really concerned about housing affordability, housing lack of growth, quality of housing. So, you know, somebody mentioned, you know, hearing from what Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust is doing, or, you know, when that comment was made, I was thinking, boy, we're going to go into this downtown plan. Maybe we should be speaking to Groundworks, because we're going to hear comments out there from people. So maybe it's a little bit of training of how do you respond to it, or how do you, Or what are
seems
they
like
doing?
years ago, but it was months ago, we talked about maybe getting some cultural competency training. So maybe that would be good. We could ask somebody
Yeah.
from Brownfields to
Yeah.
come talk to us about.
Yeah.
those kinds of dialogues.
I mean, those
so.
issues have come up before the select board too, and
Mhm.
and so I'm sure they'd appreciate whatever input we would have on this. So,
But anyway, I think some housing stuff, if, you know, it doesn't come to the planning commission, I think that that is an area of interest by the select board, seems to at least some members, and it wouldn't surprise me that some of it makes its way to the planning department, and so maybe there's issues. When we've talked, we made some, we're talking about density now and maybe some other things, but maybe it needs to be part of a bigger understanding the housing situation and the affordability or lack thereof.
When we get maybe figured out what the density piece is, and I think that's an interesting opportunity to bring that at least to the one select board member that is invested in it. If
I think
not
it, no, I think
more
it, to the entire select board, I think it would be,
to say, hey, we can help you solve some problems. Here's
well, here's what we can do.
Here's what we can do.
From a regulatory perspective, yeah. Yeah.
I'd be curious, I mean, like all of the other committees, the energy committee, the, conservation committee, I would just be curious to like actually hear what everyone else is working on and where there might be overlap. 'Cause I kind of feel like we work in these
Right.
silos and then.
especially if we can make their work easier on them.
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
help them advance whatever their goals are.
Exactly.
Maybe
Well-
something early spring would be a nice, like, maybe the department can pull something together.
Land use mixer?
Well, maybe
Where's the
we
wine?
could just split up and each one of us go to one of these
Well-
other meetings.
Oh, that's a good
Exactly.
idea.
Well, that's what I mean by like the invite thing. Like from the last 15 minutes of every meeting, like invite whoever in to like talk.
Sometimes, I mean, it's that getting people to come to your meeting is sometimes harder than.
Yes, absolutely.
You go
Unless you're,
upstairs.
Yeah.
asking them to come have a beer with you at
Yeah.
your meeting.
Yeah.
Jeez, or something.
I wouldn't be
Yeah.
opposed to that. Can we have
There's a lot of public notice involved, but that's a good idea to, have people volunteer to go to conservation committee and energy and whatever, and then report back to us about
Yeah.
what might be useful.
I mean, I can put together a listing of the different committees and the times they meet and
That would be great.
send it out to
Great.
you, and if
People
something
can
jumps
sign
out,
up.
like.
Yeah.
What if they don't want us there?
It's an
I'd
open
like
meeting.
to, yeah.
That's why there's public comment
We'd
on
love
here.
to have the public come, but we just get by benefit of BCTV.
Public watches us.
They do watch us.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And we're happy to have them watch.
Every time I go into Price Drop, I get stopped by someone.
Saw you on TV.
Yeah.
Really?
Almost every time.
So never happens.
Never have seen.
You
It's
gotta
a
go to
very
Price Chopper
strange
more
thing to,
often.
to have someone say to you, "Oh, I see you on TV all the time." I'm like, "What?"
I never get used to
I like the idea of trainings for also. You're always mentioning trainings that you're going to, but none of them are really
Well, right,
starting
and
too
you
much of my
work,
interest.
and so you can't
Not
like.
anymore. Just kidding.
But it doesn't mean,
the
like,
culture-
I'm getting paid through my job to
Yeah,
go. It's
exactly,
different,
yeah, yeah.
for you guys.
like the cultural competency I'm interested in, stuff like that. I don't know how we get more involved in that. So.
I mean, I think
make
at
it
this,
happen.
at this point, I have to kind of keep it with the area organizations. We don't have a budget for
There's a
that.
group in town, I met a woman at a birthday party, and she suggested that they might be willing to commit to do that with us at a meeting.
That'd be
I
great.
can reach back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
Right. Well, that seems like a lot of priorities.
Yeah, well, it gives a lot to
Anymore.
like, feel, I need to get moving on the zoning stuff. I'd like to wrap some of that up. But, there's.
Well, they're all good thoughts.
There are times, yeah.
Because how's this year looking? Is it a busy year?
Well, I think it would, yeah. I mean, I think it's busy, but it's just, I haven't really sat down to hear what you guys are. I feel like a lot of times we've driven the projects, and so, because we look at the town plan and say, okay, this is up next, but it's good to hear what you're interested in as well, where you think some of the needs are.
Well, that's great. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Hey,
I will second the motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank-
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.